Happy Tuesday, everybody. Today is Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. I'm joined with Pete Rango, and today we're going to be reviewing his new website that he has built from scratch. Pete is traditionally a music producer, and he's been stepping into this foray into vibe coding. Started building with Lovable, now building it in Cursor. So this is an example of a musician, a classically trained musician, who is now stepping into building their own technology to stay independent and to not rely on platforms. Some of the things Pete told me before this call that we're going to be checking out is his checkout process. He's using USDC to sell something. I still don't know what, so he's going to have to tell us both what he's selling, and we're also going to do a little bit of security audit on the code because, again, his background is in music and not in writing code. So bringing someone in like me just to do a quick review, make sure we're not exposing any environment variables, make sure we're following coding best practices, and more than best practices, just making sure there's nothing that would prevent him from launching. So with all that, welcome to the stream, Pete. How you doing today?
Great. Grateful for another day. Thank you for having me always, sweet. Really appreciate you.
It's a pleasure having you. I like having sincere musicians who are trying to be builders. Could you fill us in a little bit on what the KIO project is and what you built so far coming up to this call?
Yeah, this is actually a bit of a full circle moment for me. When I got first into blockchain and crypto, I was exploring this project, and it was part of my journey in learning Blender. So I wanted to learn how to create 3D objects and create characters eventually. And it was a bit of I don't know. It was definitely a journey to try to understand how to bring these things to life from 3D to product, right? And in the midst of that, we had the idea of like, hey, maybe this could be a tool that we could do with artists where we explore their drops further, right? So think of KIO as this malleable world that, depending on the artist we work with, KIO would form into a new shape, and we would highlight different aspects of the drop. Now, KIO actually is an AI bot that is trying to become human, very much like a Pinocchio kind of story. And it thinks that in order to become human, it needs to learn about human flaws. So it does that through studying people's drops. Now, when we first did this drop, we did it with an up-and-coming artist. His name's Cass. He's a local Richmond artist. And it was kind of serendipitous because what ended up happening was we had already created KIO in its shape and in the way that he had like a white and pink checkered body. And his first cover art, actually, he was wearing these overalls that were white and pink checkered. So we went to him and we're like, hey, like, the synchronicity is crazy. Like, let's just, experiment. And like, would you be down to have KIO be part of your drop? So this was his first single ever. He was definitely down. And that's kind of where our friendship actually began. And it was really cool. It was really cool to explore it. Now, I just never did a proper product drop for KIO because at the time we were just animating him and we are just playing around with him and exploring it. And it eventually got to the point where, I had already explored creating the vinyl toys. So I have one prototype for the vinyl toy, and then we ordered some plushies, which was great. So I have all the plushies ready to go. We have some hats that are going to be included as well. So I figured, I was included in this future merch drop that Forrest did recently with Jade and CY. And they were premiering this at FWB Fest. So I thought, hey, let me give myself a deadline to at least have the website at least operational by the 1st. And I did. I was able to meet the deadline. People were at least able to look at it and things like that. But I haven't pushed it publicly. And I haven't, I think there's only one person that actually bought a hat, and that was Jared. And in that process, I learned that I was exposing some information. So I had to like go and do my security protocol and like, clean up some of that. That's kind of where we're at, where the website's in a good place. It's functional. We're taking Stripe payments. We're taking USDC on base. You can also use Optimism, I believe. And I think I put one more chain I'm blanking on. We're in a good place overall.
Would you mind sharing your screen in either, is it okay to show us what you've already got, where Jared bought, and I'd love to know what info you discover was exposed, how you found it out, and what info it was.
Yeah, no problem. Let me go ahead and pull this. What I noticed was, so I have a friend, his name's Evan, and he's kind of like a white hat hacker. And he pretty much did what I think he said. He fuzzed my website. I don't know if that's the proper term, but fuzzing. And he found that my database was exposed. So he was able to go in there and kind of give me an idea of how I could protect that a bit. So I think we have that covered now. I had Claude Max do a security audit. He also has his own program he ran my website through. So I think we're good. I think we're good so far. But yeah, I just kind of want to double check with you. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me get to that. Here we go. Okay, so this is localhost. Actually, let me share this tab instead. Cool. All right, can you see my screen?
I see your screen. I see an X and O and enter. Looks like a wallet in the top right and a chat button in the bottom right.
Yeah, let me go ahead and actually sign out so we can get everything. So yeah, so these are the eyes of KIO. And the idea, we enter here, tells you a little bit about KIO. This is KIO in kind of his neutral state. And yeah, the point is us to collaborate with artists to create a new form of KIO and help him become more human, right? I'm going to scroll down real quick before we go into the first collection so you can see a little bit more. So this just talks a little bit about how we collaborate with artists to expand KIO's universe. I have to correct this because this should be all caps. But yeah, from kind of this initial neutral state, we collaborate with the artist. We bring up new forms for KIO, whether it's a new shape, song, a collaboration of sorts. And then, yeah, we have the evolution of KIO. And through each artist that we collaborate with, we'll have a new shape for KIO. This was actually in a collaboration with Logan Gomez, another just amazing 3D designer and animator. And here we can see the first KIO. Yeah.
Wow.
Thanks, man. One last thing I'll say is we also experimented doing this section right here, which is help bring KIO to life. Share your beautiful imperfections with KIO. So like KIO's learning what makes us human through our flaws. So every conversation helps KIO understand the beauty of our imperfections. So what I created here is a little chat bot where you can chat with KIO, and he's asking kind of like, what is your favorite flaw? And you can tell it what your favorite flaw is. And KIO will generate an image, which will go here in the community flaw gallery. So yeah, that's the gallery.
And it's got a date for each one. What were those, back in January? Or no,
yeah,
July?
No, actually, these were recently. These were kind of like at the end of my testing. Mm-hmm. And this is the last one I created when I was like, all right, cool, I think we're ready, So again, I haven't published it publicly. So hey, if you want to try it out, go for it. But yeah, let's go over to the Pretty in Pink collection. So I created a little GLB file here that chases your mouse.
Love that.
Yeah. And then here, Cass, the artist, talks a little bit about the story behind his single, this kind of theme of abandonment. He had this song, he didn't know he was going to release it. He kind of forgot about it. And eventually he came back to it and he felt like he didn't want to abandon the song. Cass is actually adopted. So he doesn't know his biological mother or father. And this song kind of revolved around that feeling of kind of abandonment. Here we can watch this short video. Yeah, so KIO goes and visits Cass.
Wow.
A little quote from KIO. I didn't know what it was at first, but that line about being seen only when there's a need, it kept looping like it was trying to show me something I forgot. And then here we introduced the KIO collection. So each KIO plushie is uniquely crafted with its own special character variations based on the featured artist. Which will you choose? And what's cool here is that we were gonna have just one plushie, but what ended up happening is in production, we were given a flawed version of him, which I loved because now we had two options, and I'm not gonna tell you which one is the flawed one for me. So you get to choose which one you like. And then I added a couple more merch items here. We're gonna do like a framed poster with KIO and you if you want to submit your picture. We have a hat, and then we have the deluxe package, which basically includes all of this stuff into one. But that's pretty much everything on the site. I can show you a little bit of everything. Last night or 2 nights ago, I added this kind of like progress bar because we do have limited editions. So I wanted to make sure that you couldn't just buy past the 50. So that was a new addition. Added a little bar here. Jared bought a hat, so now there's 99 instead of 100. And then so I can kind of sign in, show you the checkout process or anything, or we can go straight to the code.
I think showing me the checkout process would be awesome. Yeah, let's see sign in and checkout.
Okay, sick. So let's pretend that you don't know you can sign in. So I'm just gonna go down here to collect something. So I'm gonna collect one of the KIOs. I'm gonna add one to cart.
Wow.
Cart shows up. Go to proceed to checkout. Sign in or create account. So we're gonna go. We can either use MetaMask or Google. I'm gonna go ahead and use MetaMask. I'm over here connecting. I don't think you can see the screen.
No, you customized the color. You really.
Yeah, I did. Okay, so look, now we're connected. I did a little copy button in case you want to take your wallet. And that's one thing is that I noticed there's certain websites that use Privy and they don't make it easy for you to get your wallet number.
Right.
Especially when you're using email. So I made that. And then cool. So now we have that. We're signed in. How would you like to pay? Credit card or crypto? I'm gonna just hit credit card for now. And it loads up this kind of custom form. And then you would fill this out and pay.
And this is Stripe embedded components?
Yes.
Wow. So nobody needs to know that it's Stripe. It's all custom branded for you, but they get the security of Stripe under the hood.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome. This is very cool because that's one attack vector is if you're home rolling your own components, where you're storing the credit card info, but because you're using Stripe embedded checkout, they handle all that for you. And you don't, I'm sure, I don't know if you tried, but you don't actually get access to that credit card number. Everything that people type into those boxes, the dev does not have access. So it's awesome because it makes it so that you and your Vibe Code LLM have no way to expose the credit card info there. Yeah, let's see the USDC crypto flow.
Cool. So here I left a couple options if you wanted to pay just on ETH. I left this here because I was testing. But this will probably, if we're good, I'll just take this out. And then, so it checks for your balance, make sure that you have sufficient balance. Requires you to fill this out. So because we're trying to capture, this was a little, I don't know what happened here. This got messed up. But collects all your information and then you pay with the USDC once you've filled all these out.
Very, very, very cool. Okay. So you've shown me the checkout process, both Stripe and USDC. What info did you discover was exposed? You said your database info. So what are you storing in a database?
So I can actually go to Supabase and I'm storing my assets. So all all the PNGs and all that stuff. And then I'm also trying to collect some information. So for example, for the crypto flow, I need to make sure that I can collect the address, because if you're checking out with that, typically Stripe was taking care of collecting the address and giving me that information for shipping. But for crypto, I had to make that custom. So I'm also using Resend. So whenever we collect the information, Resend sends an email to the customer, and then it collects some of that data for me. Let me see. Let's look at order items.
Currently, I'm just seeing the KIO website.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not like exposing anybody's information when I go share this.
Perfect. Smart.
Let me see. Okay. Man, I'm still getting used to using Supabase. Here, I'm going to show you this real quick.
Nice, your relationships.
Yeah, and the thing is that I know that there's things in here that we're probably like not using anymore. So like here, orders, here we go. So see, like we have this customers one, and that's capturing, and I had created a webhook also because I wanted to make sure that I could collect the data into my Supabase. But I'm hoping that that's not exposing anything in the process.
You're saying from Stripe you're receiving a webhook?
Yeah.
That makes sense. No, that is very normal to use that webhook, get the info stored inside of your database. The webhook's on your server, so whatever environment variables you've exposed there are not visible as long as you don't have a public endpoint for someone to get that info. That'll be fine. So one thing that I would like to see is what API endpoints do you have in your code?
Okay, should I just pull up a cursor?
Yeah, make sure that before you share screen, you have any environment variable, env.local, or anything else close. Okay,
cool. Let me see if I have the example one. Yeah, I can show you the example one. Okay, cool.
And just giving a quick shout out, Yoshiro has checked in. He checked in 10 minutes ago and said, "What up, gentlemen? Thank you for joining us, Yoshiro. Hope you're having a good day."
Yoshiro. Okay, can you see my cursor?
I do, and I'm seeing your env.example, which is great because none of these are real keys. Okay, so nothing in here starts with next public, which means that none of these are exposed. As long as this is exactly what you're using in your .env.local, prefixing with next public allows you to access it on the client, which is fine for some things like maybe your privy app ID, but it looks like even your privy app ID, you are not storing that on the client. It's all private on the server. So just the naming of your env variables look great.
Okay.
Here it does not look like there's anything exposed. So the next question I have is, okay, was this how it was before, or did you change some of them based off of the feedback you shared?
Yeah, there was definitely, I can't remember which one was exposed, but there was definitely at some point we had one of these keys that was directly embedded in the code, and that's what I had to do. I had to take it out.
You had it right in the code. So are there any other examples of that where you're not using an env file, but you have your privy key or your Supabase key stored directly in line in the code?
Not that I know of. It's just that, like, I mean, some of these LLMs sometimes just like grab the code instead of using your environment variable. So like that's one thing that I noticed, but I was able to like fix those.
Okay, so the core things that you want to make sure that you're not exposing are OpenAI, Supabase. What is the Vite prefix? I haven't built with Vite before, so I'm not sure what the Vite prefix is that you got there.
So I am new to Vite as well. But I was told that building in Vite would just maybe be better for the future. If I wanted to scale this at any point. I don't know if that's true or not. I just kind of ended up taking the recommendation of where we started building, because typically, when we started, you and I, you told me, hey, just build on Next.js. So I really don't know necessarily yet what the pros and cons would be, Next.js versus Vite.
Can you ask in your LLM there on the side, what does the Vite prefix, all caps VITE underscore prefix do in my env.local, and maybe drag that env.local file into the chat so that it has the context. Make sure it's not env.local. We want the env.example.
Okay.
There we go. Okay. Yeah. I have a feeling it's the same as next public, and making it Vite is okay. Client side access. So that means that anything you prefixed with Supabase anon key is safe to expose. The secret keys should only be used on the server side. Correct. Okay. So Vite means that those are public. That means that your OpenAI API key is public.
Okay.
Which means that someone could take that. Can you highlight that variable and then do a global search Command Shift F for Vite OpenAI API key? Let's see where you're using that. Okay, it looks like you're actually not using this anywhere, which is great. So
this is probably from before. This is definitely probably from before.
Let's write that down as a recommendation. You're not using it, so just delete it just for good measure. You don't need to do it right now because you'll also need to go over to your .env.local. But if you have a notebook nearby, make a note to just delete from both files your env local, your env example, and if you've already are you using Vercel for deployment?
Yes.
So those 3 locations, delete it because you're only using it on the server side. And this is you exposing that variable publicly.
Okay, and question, how can you maybe walk me through how this gets exposed publicly outside of like me coding it somewhere, Like how does somebody get access to that if it says Vite?
That's a really good question, and I myself have not done any practical applications of it. Okay. I have had devs on my team who have shown me how they're able to do it. It is not something that anybody can do. It takes an intelligent person or someone that can communicate with OpenAI to be able to navigate. But especially now, as we are exposing what your ENV structure looks like, we're giving people a couple more breadcrumbs so that if they want to get that key, they could potentially figure it out.
Okay.
So best to just delete it, especially because you're not using it.
Cool.
On the client.
Maybe so we should check all the Vite uses then. Let's see.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it seems like Supabase 1 is being used.
Right. And it's an anon key. So as long as you've set up the rules in your database properly, that key cannot do things like write to the anon key is supposed to be used on the client. That way you can do some things on the client. Personally, I never use an anon key for Supabase. I do any sort of Supabase stuff on the back end just to make the database is the biggest attack vector, as you've already seen with Jared or your white hat hacker. So typically what I do is if you need something from Supabase on the front end, make an API endpoint. So that way the actual Supabase query and your Supabase keys are happening on the back end. You don't then need the anon key, and you also don't need the Vite Supabase URL. And then the question just becomes, okay, what information are you exposing via an API? Because those APIs are likely public and anybody can hit them. But then we just focus on the API endpoint and making sure that only people that are supposed to use that API endpoint are using it.
Gotcha.
It is likely fine, but the question here is, how have you set up your rules in Supabase? And have you given the anon key access to do things like write to every table, read to every table? If yes, then you have absolutely continued to expose a key on the front end, which someone can use to read your entire database or manipulate your database however they want. If you have set up your rules in Supabase such that the anon key only accesses specific things that you're fine with someone getting, if they do get the keys, then we'll be fine.
Okay, so where would because I don't know necessarily, so where in Supabase could I go to check out that, like the rules?
Can you share your Supabase screen? Let's try going back there.
Okay.
I'm also pulling up my Supabase to see where those permissions are. When you create your Supabase tables, are you just going into the interface of supabase.com and clicking the buttons to create tables and modify the tables?
Sometimes. So it's a combo of we're doing it through the what is it called, the CLI of Supabase. So sometimes we're able to inject it from Cursor. Sometimes I have to go and run it. Like it'll give me the code, and then I'll run that SQL in Supabase.
Okay, copy.
It feels so weird to be able to tell you these things because just a few months ago, I'm like, I don't know any of this.
Yeah, you're getting very smart. Your experience is definitely. Oh, I see you've just added a new screen. Your experience is informing your practice. Okay, so if you click the. Actually, yeah, stop sharing again. And where we want to go is the table editor, but I just want to make sure that you've closed any tabs that might be open in the table editor so that you're not exposing any data you don't want to share.
So so I should go to tables or here, table editor. Okay. And
If you see any tabs open, close those tabs inside of that table editor tab.
okay, those are closed now.
Let's try sharing again.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, so we can see in here, you don't have any red labels that say unrestricted, which I do in some of my applications. So this should already be set up with row level security, which likely means that anything you're trying to get from the front end is not available, which makes me think that your code, that anything you might be using with the anon key might not work. Do you know an example table that you are querying using the anon key on the front end client? If you don't know, you can ask your LLM.
Okay. So let's ask what components are using the Supabase anon key.
Exactly.
Okay. And I guess it's Vite, right? Because I don't see.
Correct. It's prefixed with Vite Supabase anon key because it needs to be exposed on the public client.
Okay. All right. I'm going to switch over to that real quick.
Mm-hmm. Use order service, use the anon key for order creation and management. Supabase client, main Supabase client integration, Stripe payment for Stripe payment processing. With Supabase, I'm confused as to why that one would need to be using anon because
This one.
Stripe, yeah, because I thought you were using a webhook. SRC components, KIO chat widget for chat functionality with Supabase. Okay, so it sounds like backend functionalities, yeah, and the backend functionalities are all going to be fine. KIO chat functionality, create order creation. Okay, so this is where I'm a little confused.
Well, one thing for the webhook real quick is that when I started talking to the LLM about I want to capture the information that's going to Stripe into my Supabase, it said, okay, well, we need to do that with a webhook. So I don't think it's actually using the webhook in the way that you would expect it.
So you didn't go into Stripe, into their webhooks tab, and put in a URL of your website to receive webhooks from Stripe?
I did, but it's just not necessarily being used in the way that I think you want it to be used. Because this was when I was just talking to it about like, hey, I want to just collect information from Stripe into my database.
Okay, let's talk about the potential downsides or the potential impacts of your next publics as you have them, or your Vites in this case. Your OpenAI key, if someone gets that, they can charge your LLM. Someone like me could use that in my own project, and then I just say, sweet, now I don't need to fill up OpenAI credits. I'll use Pete's, and Pete, as long as Pete keeps refilling or he has auto refill on his OpenAI account, I'll just be able to continue to piggyback off of your service. In my opinion, there's no reason for you to expose that publicly. OpenAI in your chat should be using an API endpoint, which would be on the back end. So there should not be a reason that you would need to expose that publicly. I'm curious but we already determined that you're not exposing it publicly, or you're not using that, and that's something that you can delete.
Yeah,
So,
at least the Vite OpenAI one. Yep.
Correct. Supabase, the potential downside of that is that's where you're storing all your customer information, orders, where their shipment info is, what their emails are. Nice thing is you don't have social security numbers or credit cards, so you're fine there. So the worst case is on the read side, someone reads every single order, and then they know the name, email address, and the home address of every single person that's bought from you, which is likely going to decrease trust and potentially lead to people getting molested in ways that they don't want. On the right side, if you're worried about people being able to manipulate your database, if someone doesn't like Pete Rango and they're watching this and they see, okay, Pete's storing these Supabase keys on the front end and they just want to wreck your system, they could use those keys to delete every table or fill the table with bad info, and they can they can manipulate the table. So they could read all the data and then go and visit all of your customers and do bad things there, malicious things. And then on the right side, they could delete everything so that you get a massive day of purchases, and then that person goes in and deletes it all. So they've been charged either via USDC or Stripe, and you don't know where to send the stuff to, or they updated it all to their address. And so then the malicious person gets all the items that you send to them. Those are some of the examples of where that might be bad. Privy, that's usually fine to expose publicly. I'm surprised that you're doing both Vite Privy App ID and Privy App ID. Makes me curious if you're not using one of those.
I think this is, like I said, this there was a period of time where this was like there wasn't any security really, at least from prior to doing the security audit. So like after I did the security audit, I think it went back and tried to like adjust some of that. So I think that's why we still see some of this Vite left over. But as you can see, the Supabase one still being used, and we can check out the Privy one. So it'd be Vite Privy, and let me look that up real quick. So it looks like here, the deployment one, that's just a document, but here, yeah, it seems like it's not being necessarily used, right? This is just like for
It
an
is.
error
No,
message.
it's being used right there. That app ID is then put into the Privy Provider Online 41, 42.
Okay. Oh,
So
yeah,
it is
yeah.
being used. However, that's normal. I expose my Privy App IDs on the client side all the time, and so I have not ever had any downsides to that. I believe
Okay.
that's part of Privy's design, is that the app ID is fine to expose, but then there's other environment variables within Privy that you do want to keep more secure. Can you then do a global search for the non-byte prefixed Privy App ID to see if you're using the server side one?
Yeah.
env example, env local. What about index.ts? Yeah, that one.
This looks like, why is it
Where's
red?
Privy App ID being used in here? It looks like on line 6 you're not using site URL. So copy the variable earlier on the line, Privy App ID, that's not all caps, and look inside of the file to see. Line 7,
This one right
after
here?
the word const, correct.
Okay.
Where else
And
is
look
that
for
being
this
used?
one.
No, just inside of this file, just inside of this file.
Oh, inside of this file? Okay.
Correct. Auth, apps, JWKs. Okay, so you are doing some auth here. What's your reason for doing the auth? Okay, so you're using this on the back end. Since you're, okay, so you are using both. There's no reason for, if you're already exposing it on the front end, there's no reason. But this one should be fine. Let's go back to your env example and let's keep looking. Most critical ones so far, OpenAI and Supabase. env example.
I don't know why this is happening now, though. This was not.
What?
Okay, there you go. Nothing. No, it was red. I don't know why it had turned red. Okay, so example. Okay.
Privy, not important. Supabase, I recommend you look at it. OpenAI, I recommend you delete it. Stripe publishable key, it looks like you're using it perfectly. You've got a publishable key. The purpose of that is that it can be on the client, and so you're using it on the client. And then you've got a secret key, which is not available on the client. So both of those should be fine. Resend you only have on the back end, so that one should be fine. And site URL, looks, that one's likely not important if you had prefixed it with Vite.
Yeah.
So those are going to be fine. So the only things I recommend, OpenAI, delete the unused Vite OpenAI key. And on Supabase, think through if you are comfortable exposing your anon key and your URL as you do. If you're not, move anytime you're writing to Supabase onto the backend and expose it with an API endpoint. So that way the attack vector is much more limited. Other than that, your environment variables should be fine. And the next step I recommend is we look at your API endpoints.
Okay. And how do we go about doing that? Should we just type API up here, or?
It's a good question. I'm not familiar with Vite, so try asking your LLM, where are my API endpoints?
Would it, I know I could manually go and delete the Vite OpenAI and the Vite Supabase stuff, but could you help me just create a prompt to talk to LLM about how we could go about the process of making sure that doesn't break by deleting this? Let me see. Okay, here we go. So it says available endpoints. Here we go. Your API endpoints are Supabase edge functions.
So you don't have any actual API endpoints. Order management, create order, yada yada. Ask where your Stripe API webhook is. Where's my Stripe API webhook? Located at, oh, it's in Supabase. Interesting. So you got the function in Supabase.
And that's not correct, right?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
It potentially is.
Okay.
I am not familiar with how Vite uses API endpoints, and
Okay.
it seems like you were heavily using Supabase functions, which if I use Supabase functions, I use them automatically behind the scenes, and there's no code on my client or in my code base that uses those functions. So those are two things that you've got different that I don't have much experience with.
Okay.
So far, I still don't know the question of it if you do have any API endpoints. My current hypothesis is your API exists inside of Supabase, and in Supabase somehow these functions are being called, probably from your client code.
Mm-hmm.
In that case, excuse me, feeling a little out of it.
Oh, take your time, man. No worries. Yeah,
I don't
sorry
know
you're
enough
not feeling
about Vite to be able to understand if whether or not the LLM is correct about you not having API endpoints. Supabase side, it sounds like that's where your API endpoints are, and so you will likely want to look into what is being exposed from your Supabase functions. Maybe ask that what potentially sensitive information is being exposed in my Supabase functions, and see if it can help with that.
All right. Man, I'm sorry you're not feeling well, brother.
It's okay. This is my last call. I'm going to go back to bed after this.
Okay, good. They log partial API keys to console.
Yeah. Definitely delete those console logs. If you're not using the dev logging anymore, definitely
Yeah, I'm
delete
not.
any console logs where you're exposing keys. In that, you don't need to worry about it breaking anything because console logs do not impact functionality. They're just for you to see information.
Okay.
Delete env console logs. Okay, we have roughly 10 minutes left.
Okay.
So far, what I've recommended is delete Vite OpenAI. It's unused, and so you don't have to worry about it breaking anything because we already verified it's not being used. Delete it locally in both env example, env local, and in your Vercel instance. Delete your env console logs. So find what the prompt you just did. You can follow that up with delete any of these console logs, or you can manually go to those locations and delete them if you're worried about it breaking things. And that should fix that. The biggest thing you'll likely want to keep thinking about is how are you exposing your Supabase keys in your Supabase functions, and are you okay with your usage of Supabase anon key in the ways that it's being used?
Okay.
I don't know enough about how you're using Supabase functions in this moment, but at least you now have a more refined ability to focus on only the Supabase keys. I recommend you take a deeper look at how they're being used and what potential malicious actor, what actions could a malicious actor do if they get your URL and your anon key based off of the rules that you have currently set up in your database.
Okay.
Other than that, what other things do you want to talk through during this call to make sure that we don't spend too much time on a security audit and we hit
Yeah, no
anything
problem.
you're interested in?
I mean, to me, is thinking about like, is this the well, actually, let's just talk about the executive producer stuff and the NFTs. So, like, I'm interested in doing executive producer 1155s. So I might put like, hey, you want to become an executive producer? I might just like do a separate page and instead of 1155s, and that's cool. But I think I kind of answered my own question there. Is like I think I just might do a separate page as opposed to like putting it there. So this is more like a user experience, right? I feel like most users that might just come here and just want to purchase the plushie or anything, they're not really going to care too much about executive producing. But I think I might just do a separate page for that. I guess my follow up is it normal to airdrop NFTs to these privy wallets, that are created? Because I just haven't had experience with that where, okay, cool, you purchased the plushie, you use an email to create the account, and we airdropped you an NFT. Is that do I just give them a function so that they could transfer their NFT out if they wanted to?
Yeah, that sounds like a normal flow. If the only
Okay.
thing they've given you is email, you don't have any wallet. So your options are simplest lift, airdrop it to the Privy wallet, and then talk or think about how someone gets that from their Privy wallet to an externally owned account in EOA or a smart wallet, I guess.
Yeah. I
Or
would just basically have to
alternatively,
create
you
like a
use the email.
dashboard, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're good. Alternatively, you use the email and then you send them an email before you do the airdrop and you say, hey, I've already sent you your order for your NFT. Do you want me to just send it to the Privy wallet that you were set up, or do you have another wallet where you would prefer to receive it? Because anybody that's signing in with email or Google, you will have access to their email address. So you could reach out to them and clarify if you're uncertain. So that would be the upper end that I would recommend. Lowest lift, just airdrop it to their Privy wallets. If someone has an issue with that, hopefully they reach out to you and you resolve it with them, whether you actually build things so that they can send that Privy NFT to a different wallet, or just consider that Privy NFT wallet dead and airdrop a new NFT when someone does complain. Just send them a new NFT that's probably the lowest lift. Does that help answer your question?
Yeah. No, that's pretty much it. I would just, I didn't have any experience with like airdropping to a Privy wallet and like what would I have to do to help somebody transfer things out of it. I just didn't want to make it so that I airdrop something to this Privy wallet and then they're like, I have no idea how to move this out of here.
Yeah, right. In that case, what do you think is your preferred solution? The only thing that's going to be stored in there is an NFT, a digital collectible. You're not having them loaded up with funds. Nobody's sending USDC or any other currency into that wallet. The only thing that could potentially be in there is an NFT that you're going to airdrop, right?
Yeah. So I think I might just end up doing something where maybe after we finish with selling out the plushies, I might just collect everybody's email and send them like hey, if you want to claim the KIO NFT, you can go to this site and claim it, or we'll airdrop it to you.
Both of those sound like great options.
Okay. Sick. Well, man, I think that's it. And man, if you want, I don't mind ending a little early because I know you're not feeling well, brother.
Is there anything else that we have not talked about that you were hoping to get out of this call to make sure that you feel good to publicly launch KIO or at least move forward with the other development steps you have?
I'm feeling generally confident. I don't know if you have any other suggestion of a prompt that I should run, of a specific attack, or I don't know, and anything that a new dev like me could run to do another security audit. I mean, I already ran a security audit with Claude, but obviously it didn't catch what you just caught. So
If it is, I mean, it might be written, it might have caught it in the first round and it's all good. I just don't know enough about Vite nor how you're using the Supabase functions to give you a good answer. I would write a prompt like, please look at the usage of these specific environment variables, and you're only going to give it two. Next, or a Vite Supabase URL, invite Supabase anon key. Be my white hat hacker and figure out if there's any ways a malicious actor could get access to these variables and expose private customer information like their shipping address, or write to my database to modify the records in ways that I don't approve of.
okay, perfect.
Were you able to catch all that?
No, but I can just watch the end of this recording and catch it. So no worries.
Benefit of doing this live.
Yeah. So no, man, thank you so much. This is pretty much everything I needed to get done with you, is just kind of do a light check on like how am I using variables and making sure nothing's exposed like crazy. I'm gonna also just have my homie do his fuzzing and all that stuff too after I do this last edit, and then hopefully we can launch before the end of the week.
A couple wrap-up questions for you on you being a musician that is now doing more dev work. When was the first time you wrote code or you built an application?
So my very, very first time was when ChatGPT first had the ability to write some code. So this was early GPT days, and I was able to create a little Pong game with it. And that was very much talking to GPT, pulling code in. So it was a little bit more like building it from scratch in some aspects because, GPT at the time wasn't giving you, I didn't have Cursor, right? So that's definitely one of them. And then the iteration past that was when I started working with Eternal Garden, and I created a little onboarding tool where I wanted to figure out if we asked you like a form, right? Like if you were logging into the Eternal Garden website or something, we asked you a few questions. Could we create an Eternal Garden character and have that be like your profile picture? So that was like the second iteration, and that was with Cursor. And then, yeah, I've just been building things since then. The biggest things I've probably built, at least for myself, have been my website and the KIO website.
And so OpenAI came out with the ability to write code. Was that in the initial version of ChatGPT back in 2022?
Yeah, around 20, probably end of 22, I started doing that.
So you've got about 3 years of experience practicing vibe code to some extent.
Yeah, somewhat. Mm-hmm.
And you started with very simple, a Pong game, not overly complex, not trying to stack a checkout with on-chain, with Privy, with a database. It was just, let me see if I can build something very simple first. And from there, you've had 3 years of slowly making things more complex to now you do have Kia, you've got USDC, you've got Stripe, you've got Supabase, you've got a checkout tab, but it's taken 3 years of practice to slowly build up your confidence to build these newer things, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, even this step right here, like one thing is to just have my website, and I don't really care if somebody goes and deletes everything, whatever. I have a copy of it, right? But yeah, doing something like this, right, where I'm dealing with people's information and data, that's where I really started like, wow, I can't just like vibe code this out and send it out, because like I need to make sure that this is secure. So I've been a little bit more hesitant about pushing something out like this. So I'm just kind of checking with all my friends that can audit and give me some feedback. So, but yeah, I feel confident. I think the biggest challenges have been, at least for this last project, is using Vite, right? Because I was so used to just using Next.js, and I was in the middle of vibe coding this out, and I didn't even realize we were using Vite at some point. I was like, oh wow, like we're using Vite. And then I asked my friend, he's like, oh well, maybe for the future, Vite might be like a good thing for you to use. So I just ended up leaving it instead of rewriting everything to Next.js.
Yeah, which is perfect. Now you're getting experience with something that even I don't have much experience with. So you'll be able to help other people out more than I've been able to. What do you think is the tools or the mentalities that have allowed you to stay persistent with this? I think most of the musicians I work with, they will start and then they'll drop off and they'll go back to using Bonfire, or they'll go back to using Name Your Platforms or a Sound, etc. You seem to continue to expand your projects more. What do you think has been a characteristic tool or practice that has enabled you to continue to expand and do more complex things in the products that you're building?
Well, I love a good puzzle, and I feel like figuring out, like, it seemed crazy to me that we have this insane tool like Claude or Cursor, right? And that a musician like me wouldn't be able to get this done, right? I'm like, yo, I'm able to ask it. This is like the most powerful Google we've ever had, right? And it's able to do code with me. So I have to be able to do it. And then I started understanding context windows, right? And I started to understand like, oh, I should write, my development, you know, document a little bit more before I just go and like vibe code something out. And another thing, right, is like, instead of just prompting it something, like giving it a file and be like, hey, analyze this file, right? It's a lot more about like the building blocks. At first, when I first started coding, I was like, hey, build this whole thing out for me, right? And like, yeah, you can one shot things, but it's much better. Like the way I like to do it is I'll build my front end and I'll make sure like my front end works. And once I have my front end working, I start putting the back end into it. And I think that that's been good for me. I've known some other devs that I've talked to that they're like, we're all back end and we do all the simple stuff first and then we build a front end. But I'm just such a visual learner. I'm just such a visual person. So like, it's hard for me to like write code and then be like, oh, this is cool. The other thing I've also learned for myself is, I broke my checkout. Like I had like 2 days where like my checkout was just not working. And I was like, you know what? How about I just build a simple app that just tests my checkout process? And I built a very simple app, no, crazy looking front end or whatever. And I was able to test it out faster without having to worry about the front end. And that was definitely like something that helped me iterate more. And then, yeah, in general, I feel like anybody that gets into this, it's very overwhelming, right? To look at all these apps. And I mean, this is the biggest thing I've built. So like, as I'm seeing all my components and everything on the side, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much, right? But, taking it component by component, figuring one little thing at a time and just building on top of each other. So that's the only way I was able to build this, right? It's like, cool, front end's done. I want a checkout process. Let's build a checkout process. Let's incorporate things. Then let's add the resend. So it's been definitely step by step that's helped me.
If you're a musician or a creative and you're not sure where to get started and you don't have any examples of musicians that are learning how to code, I highly recommend you go and follow at P3T3RANGO on X. Is that your handle on all platforms?
Yeah.
On Instagram and all the platforms. Follow him so that way you can see an example musician producer has not been classically trained on how to code, but is building a product with a checkout flow and is figuring out how to get paid. Follow Pete, Make sure you give a like and a repost on this video so that other musicians can see an example musician, and we can help other musicians see that it's possible to build your own tech. You don't have to depend on a developer. You don't have to go and shell out $10,000 to pay someone like me. You don't have to depend on a platform. You can do all this yourself if you're like Pete and you're interested in puzzles and you're willing to figure out the first principles of the building blocks, working step by step, context windows. You can figure this out. So thank you all for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with STTSM, musician down here in Colombia, and we'll be working on bass pay. Thank you for tuning in.